When I was younger, you could say that I was around the wrong crowd. Specifically when I was about 18 years old, I remember being at a mate's house, helping him and his girlfriend at the time with some renovations on her house. My mate and his girlfriend were quite a bit older than me, and they had a daughter who would have been about the same age as my daughter is now, actually. Perhaps a little older, about 18 months to 2 years old, walking and interacting, but not talking fully yet, other than a few words. At one point when I was there, we were out the back of the house having a cigarette break, and the three of us were standing there smoking, and their daughter was just kind of doing her thing, standing in the doorway and watching the grown-ups. And as we were smoking, their daughter started looking up at us and started to copy what we were doing, putting her hand to her mouth like this and breathing in and out, pretending to be smoking. And as she was doing this, she was smiling and happy. She thought she was doing a good thing. Her mum acknowledged her and said something like, "Yeah, we're smoking," in a nice tone, but I could tell that she felt bad and she knew that the situation was much less than ideal. At that very moment, my heart broke a little bit, I think. I felt so sorry for this little girl, just a toddler. She had no choice about what she was learning. I felt like a piece of shit for being one of the people that was influencing her in this way. But to be honest, I was too caught up in my nihilistic and hedonistic teenage way of life to let this get to me for long. I was caught up in my own unconscious patterns, a product of my environment. Even if the little girl was told, "No, you don't smoke, it's bad for you," she had already learned that smoking is something that normal adults do. It's a normal thing to do, and naturally she would want to fit in. The phrase "actions speak louder than words" comes to mind. That was nearly 15 years ago, and I pray that she's doing okay now. We've all been environmentally conditioned since and maybe even before birth. The stories and perspective that your parents, teachers, peers, or the media impressed on you have been stored in your mind and may have never been interrogated to see if they are really true. You may have been living out false ideas and narratives that have been directing the course of your life without you even realizing it. What's more, though, is that the ideas and narratives that you were told throughout your life are only part of how you learned in your developmental years. Much of what we learned from others came from modeling and imitation, or observational learning. Just like my old friend's daughter, kids model and imitate the people around them way before they can understand the language that we use to describe those actions. We naturally and unconsciously model the people around us, picking up not just their actions, but their attitudes and ways of being in the world. It's not just people in our immediate life that we unconsciously imitate, though. Think of a teenager who starts listening to a certain musician and becomes a huge fan. They start to want to dress like that artist, to act like them, and even have the same perspective as them. Even if, for the most part, these artists aren't explicitly telling their fans, "You should dress like me," or "You should think like me." Even as adults, we're still unconsciously influenced by those who we spend time around, and those who we listen to online. The voices of those that we listen to and allow to influence us are important and powerful, and it goes beyond just the ideas themselves. Through his research on communication, Albert Mehrabian, a professor of psychology at the University of California in Los Angeles, found that 55% of how we communicate and receive messages from others is body language. 38% is tone of voice, and only 7% is actual words. It makes you think, what other unspoken influences and communicators do we receive and model from others without even knowing it? What about the son or the daughter who says they never want to end up like their father or mother, yet unconsciously act out the same mannerisms and the ways of being without even noticing it? Humans could communicate through body language way before we learned to talk with words. And we learned to talk way before we invented written language. So it's clear that our brains evolved to learn and be shaped much more by observation and influence than the words that we hear and are told. The ability to learn through modeling becomes even more potent when we hold someone in high regard. Think about the celebrities, athletes, or thought leaders that we admire. They become our exemplars. Their actions and attitudes carry even more weight in our minds, precisely because of the status that we've granted them. You've probably heard of the phrase, birds of a feather flock together, or heard some motivational or self-improvement people talking about the people you spend time with determining who you will become or the success that you'll have in life. But have you really applied this knowledge in your life? Or are there still negative influences that you allow into your life that are seeding the negative beliefs and destructive patterns in your mind? If we unconsciously absorb so much from our environment, it's crucial to be intentional about who and what we surround ourselves with. This includes our in-person interactions, the media we consume, and the voices that we follow online. Just as we've unintentionally absorbed information, we can consciously choose the input that we feed our minds. We can deliberately cultivate a mental environment that supports growth, prosperity, and the person that we want to become. There are 3 steps to doing this. First is choose your exemplars. Second is curate your content. And third is cut unhelpful inputs. Before I go into these steps, consider your most important values and your priority goals in your life. And for step 1, choose your exemplars. Ask yourself, who do you know, either personally or as a follower of their work, that has achieved or embodies one or more of the things that you'd like to be more like yourself? Who is walking the walk, not just talking the talk? Make a list of people for each of the areas that you are aiming at in life and start immersing yourself in their presence, which leads us into step 2, curate your content. Make a list of courses, books, podcasts, videos, or social media accounts that aligns with your chosen exemplars and actively seek out content that inspires, teaches, or motivates you. Step 3 is cut unhelpful inputs. Are there negative sources that you consume or are influenced by? This can include news media that thrives on fear-mongering, social media feeds that make you feel inadequate, or spending time with people who drain your energy. You don't have to completely cut people out of your life, but you seriously need to consider the negative effect that spending time with or around people has on you. You can still see people, just don't go as often and don't stay as long. You need to reduce or completely cut out the toxic and negative inputs that you receive from the media and online. Everything you allow into your consciousness either helps you improve or brings you down. You are either growing or you are dying. You can never stand still, even if you want to. Because of all the toxic inputs that you have received throughout your life, you could say that your brain has become dirty and it needs to be washed. By choosing your role models wisely, curating positive information, and cutting away unhelpful influences, you are effectively brainwashing yourself in the best possible way.